Hey guys, it's Alanah again. The audio sucks for the first minute and a half because Austin forgot to press play on his mic. And Troy still has a crackle. I'm really sorry.
I would also like to point out on this subject that this podcast has seemingly captured Austin in various states of moving. It feels like,
and yet I'm going nowhere.
That my eye immediately goes
to take all the shots.
Yeah, it's the box. It's the piano just moves ever so slightly just to see if people are paying attention, and then there's a box on top of it, and then a ship.
Oh, yeah.
So you want to know? You want to know the funny story with this?
I do. I wouldn't have brought it up if I didn't.
This is a Dawn.
Oh my god! Did anybody else feel like that was way bigger? Like,
no,
I thought
it's the worst size I expected.
Movie magic, right?
Force perspective.
The piano's only this big.
So this was hand carved by my father.
What?
When I was a kid, we had to do a book report, and I chose Voyage of the Dawn Treader from the Narnia Chronicles.
That's my favorite book.
And I was plowing my way through the series at the time, and then I just kind of incidentally chose that one. And we had to, I can't remember the specifics of the assignment. This was probably 3rd or 4th grade, but I remember we had wait a minute.
Why is something happening to your PC, or are you trying to remember something? What's happening?
I'm
looking around. What does it mean?
I'm discovering a technical
issue.
Our audio listeners.
I discovered a technical challenge that I corrected.
A technical challenge. That's a nice way to put it.
So smooth. So smooth.
Yep. So
barely even noticed.
Apologies on the audio you'll be receiving up until the moment I discovered that.
Beautiful.
Yep. So this was the book report stipulated, I guess, that we just make something related to the book. You know, I don't remember if it could be anything or whatever. It certainly would never have been initially my idea to do this. But my dad was like, oh, let's carve a Dawn Treader. And then very quickly it was like, look, you're slowing me down here. I need to just make some progress on the thing. So my dad just full on went and did the thing completely.
That rules, Austin. That's so cool.
This is exactly really like cool. The South Park episode of the
Pinewood Derby. Oh yeah,
you guys just need to date already.
No, so
yeah, it's beautiful.
So what happened was, I then found myself with this dilemma where I'm like, I'm supposed to go to school in like the 4th grade with this masterfully I mean, like, can you see like your
dad was
amazing.
He made lifeboats that are separately then glued on and then made a little cloth sail. And so the funny thing was, and the curved tail that's solid, like the tail,
insane.
It's a solid piece that's carved that way. So the hilarious thing is I then have to go and essentially pass this off as my work.
I did this overnight
and
without the total help from my dad. Now, did you just use everything that was in the kit? There's nothing else.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there wasn't a big blowback from it at school, but then the funny thing is that my dad then put it on a shelf in his office labeled the Shrine to Bad Parenting, where it remained for 20 years or something until one day I took it back and I said, you know what? I want that thing. No,
that's super cool.
Where's it been? Where in your office has it been?
It moves around. It kind of
it
wasn't originally
the
on the piano.
And stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's seen some shit. It's
very nice.
What a great series that was. Yeah, Voyage of the Dawn Treader was my favorite in that series simply because it was the first time that they really demonstrated consequences. Like, not everyone's coming back. Like, the first 2, they're there. Lion Witch in the Wardrobe, they're there. And then the second one is, was it
Prince Caspian?
No,
I can't remember the order.
That's later in the series.
Prince Caspian. It was twice. Was the second one, because that's when they go and they free him and they get the animals to fight and everything. Voyage of the Dawn Treader is the one where Prince Caspian's grown up.
It's been so long. It's been so long since I read them, and I never watched.
Never watched the movies.
I heard that. That's what I heard. Yeah,
I loved that series. Yeah, it was.
Oh my God.
But isn't there a thing where the book there's like a publication order that's separate? It's kind of like Final Fantasy in Japan versus the U.S. and the NES.
Yeah, because the series jumps around a whole lot.
Yeah, it's like
it moves away from Edmund and Lucy and Peter and Susan. So like after Dawn Treader. because it goes like Silverchair and all that stuff, which was a completely different.
I just swear I remember there
I'm
being
sorry.
box.
I'm
swear I remember
super nerdy.
there
To
were-
me, again, I was like, there were kids that like they're gonna play this, or you're gonna like it was either Tolkien or it was gonna be C.S. Lewis, and I just went C.S. Lewis, and I read Tolkien way later. But
I
like,
don't know how kids read Tolkien. Like when I was a kid, Hobbit is the first book that I actually finished reading. And then,
that's not uncommon. It's a lot.
but my parents were like, "Let's graduate you. Let's just read Lord of the Rings," and I couldn't. It was too
heavy?
many adjectives. I think it was like just so.
These
descriptive
people
in
use
lot
a
of
different
things.
language. I can't read
I
this.
just didn't. I couldn't.
If you
do
want
it.
a really trippy thing, like C.S. Lewis, like sure that whole Chronicles of Narnia is great. It's definitely his homage to Tolkien because they were friends.
But isn't Narnia like the lion is literally a parallel to God? Like it's hyper religious.
Oh no,
Jesus.
it's
super so,
yeah, it's
yeah.
way more of a messianic character.
I
But
know that C.S. Lewis is an oft-quoted, essentially Christian apologist. Like a lot of his
Oh,
arguments are
he-
referenced in like debates and stuff on the.
he is the apologist. By
Yeah,
the way.
outspokenly so.
Like The Great Divorce is an amazing book. But C.S. Lewis was basically an apologist without being dogmatic. He was just such a logical pragmatist about it, and his writing is incredible. But my favorite of his, even though I have such a nostalgia for Chronicles of Narnia, is actually the space trilogy that he did. Where
Did you do a space trilogy? I did.
Oh
Also,
my
just
God,
because it's
dude.
happening semi-frequently, I wanted to apologize to everyone for the crackle in Troy's
Blame
audio.
Elgato. I love
Yeah,
Miguel Lozada.
It seems to be a
but,
software
like,
problem. You can hear it now, right, Austin?
I heard it that time. You
Yeah.
know what it sounds like? It sounds
What?
like when you're on the phone with someone who's got the headphones with the mic attached to the earbud, and when
And
they
they're rubbing on
shift,
something.
it
Yeah,
rubs the mic
yeah, it's a
across
strange
their
noise.
shirt.
I'm not
but
rubbing anything. My hands are up here, just so you know.
Back to the
And
space
now they're
series.
hidden.
Back to the space trilogy. So if you want to check it out, it's really dope. The first one is Out of a Silent Planet, which is also a great King's X record.
Let me look it up.
Paralandria and That Hideous Strength. And the premise is this: a man named Ransom, which fucking awesome name.
Hell yeah, dude.
Gets
Fuck yeah, Ransom.
kidnapped.
Is this a Kojima
It is.
production?
Sam Ransom. He gets kidnapped and taken aboard a spaceship to Mars. And once he lands there, he finds this whole race of people, and they're discussing, like, tell us what it's like on your planet. And he's like, well, we've got the system of government that looks like this. They're like, okay. And it's like, and we've got this system of religion where we believe in God. Like, yeah, we know God. Like, oh, so you have like a similar thing. I was like, no, we know God. And also, on your planet is the evil one. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you have the devil there, but he's bound to Earth. He can't leave. So we've never been able to be here. And it's like being in the garden all over again. There's no knowledge of there's no notion of sin. There's no notion of right and wrong. There just is. And then you find out that the devil he was a stowaway onto the spaceship, and he just goes through Mars and he starts rampaging across it and just creating atrocities. And they come across like something that was killed.
How have I
and they're like,
never heard of this?
Yeah.
dude, it's so dope. They're like, we don't understand what happens. Like, well, somebody killed this. Like, I don't understand what happened. It is such a cool premise, but and
What's it
then
called?
that hideous
It's
strength,
literally called the Space Trilogy, otherwise
Yeah.
called the Cosmic Trilogy.
Cosmic Trilogy,
Space
the
Trilogy.
last one,
Working title.
Paralandria.
Years later, a young John Romero.
Paralandria
Idea into
shows
his
that he
head.
was like he was doing some drugs, man. That guy was like he had to have been hanging with all those cats that were like experimenting with mescaline and everything else because that there's no way there's no way he can write that shit in a sober mind.
It says
Anyway,
a fragment of another sequel was published as The Dark Tower in The Dark Tower and Other Stories.
Stephen King.
Well, it says The Dark Tower, but I imagine it's got to be a different Dark Tower. Has to be. Oh yeah, C.S. Lewis has a manuscript incompleted called The Dark Tower. That is an unfinished sequel to the science fiction novel Out of the Silent Planet. Interesting. That's super cool. I had no idea. All I knew was Narnia. Of course, he's written other things. Makes
Yeah,
perfect
The
sense.
Great Divorce is a really really good. I don't know if it's what it's called, but it's like it's an apologetic. It's his treatise on how fucked up the church is. It's great.
So wait,
He's
is
the
he
one
religious,
who's very. Oh yeah, C.S. Lewis.
So he is religious, but you're calling him an apologist. To me, apologist always sounds like someone who is not the thing, but is apologizing on behalf of the thing.
It's the opposite. The apologist
opposite.
is
Okay.
the defender. Like a defender, a Christian apologist would be someone, especially in the modern use of that. It would be like
Who defends
the,
Christians.
and someone who can like formally sort of debate a given proposition. Like here are like there's a very famous one named William Lane Craig who quotes from C.S. Lewis fairly regularly, and he's like got a doctorate in philosophy and religion and that kind of thing, and offers very kind of intellectualized arguments around the things like the historicity of Jesus. Like what is the
Right.
actual evidence that he even existed first off, and that all the things that are written about in the Bible happened. He's the kind of guy the apologist who goes in and argues. And C.S. Lewis's big contribution to that, if I'm remembering correctly, was he basically said you end up with three possibilities with regard to Jesus: that he was a lunatic, essentially a crazy person that convinced a bunch of people of his madness, or that he
liar.
wasn't mad, rather, that he was a liar, deliberately decepting people, or that he is in fact the Lord. That was like his little sort of L trifecta. And what I like is that there's a modern philosophy counter to that says you're leaving off one potential fourth one, at least one fourth one.
I mean, didn't
which
exist.
you can also well, if you accept the premise that he existed,
Okay, got it.
then he's one of these three things. There's the fourth one, which I like because it's still an L, would be a legend. The idea that it wasn't
it's
that
editorialized, right? That's the other one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like people transmitted the story, and it changed a little bit each time until it wasn't what he himself would even have advocated.
Has anyone read The Name
Right.
of the Wind? Patrick Rothfuss?
No.
Okay, so
No.
But are you the person that keeps
Is that the
recommending
one
to
with
me?
Jesus and Christ as separated characters? Is that one? Or?
No. However,
Oh, okay.
it kind of touches on these themes. Still waiting for the last book to come out. Just been waiting for a while on that. Not as bad as Game of Thrones fans, but it's very much about a guy who is seen as being this absolute legend, who's like known for, calling lightning. And it's like it starts with him retelling a story, but from his perspective, everything is sort of sometimes an accident or a little bit of a fluke. So it's like taking a fantasy novel of some guy who has done all these grand things in his life, but from his perspective, a lot of it is just very basic. Like, he's still pretty impressive, but a lot of it's like, I didn't mean to call the lightning, it just kind of happened. Just like, that was not a thing that I planned as some kind of god. Just beautifully written, though. There's this phrase that Rothfuss uses all the time that for some reason I really love, which is when two characters are walking next to each other, he will say they fell into step. That's just such a poetic way to phrase that. Like, I always really just love the way that he writes. He'll describe like a sky in a way that I'm just like, damn, dude, it's a
And
poetic
they lay
ass
with each
sky.
other. That was the other. And they lay with each other.
They lay with each other.
Now, one final comment on this, and we can probably get back on the topic. But
We never even touched on the
was gonna
topic.
say,
We
Yeah.
were never on the topic.
Yeah, no,
we
we're
were
just talking about books.
Alana's going to cut all this.
all this is getting cut. Most people don't realize that everything that we accept as fact, as quote a fact or history about Jesus, was at one time voted on, and it was by committee over the course of two different things. There's the Council of Nicaea and the Council of Trent, where the church as it existed in its time was just like it. Again, there's a South Park reference for this. It's like everybody believes in all these different things, and the first thing they had to vote on was like, okay, hands up. Was he God or was he not? And they were like, and the eyes got it. But they were definitely like, we had to count and see. It wasn't this unanimous vote. There were people like, he never said he was God. It was like,
And there
he
are
absolutely
books-
said he was God.
Wait,
There are
wait,
books
wait,
of the Bible
Isn't
that
he not God? Isn't he the son of God?
depends on if you're a Trinitarian.
we
or
go.
not.
Depends on the theologist.
So this gets into it.
I did
And
go to
this
a
is-
religious school, so that's probably just like what I've learned is like they obviously never teach you the other side. They're like,
This is the incarnation.
Well, no, it's more poetic than that. It's the idea that he is a manifestation. So you've got the
He
what
is also
Jesus
God.
Christ, the Holy Ghost, and
the
God.
Trinity would be Father, Son, Holy Ghost, right? In nomine
that's
Patri,
right.
Filii,
But they are all the
Spiritus
same
Sancti.
being in theory, according to some theologists and not others.
Which is a response.
There's been a lot of time to debate and discuss. Yeah.
Yeah, which is a response to other cultures where like, wait a minute, you have one God? Because think about most religions at that, especially at that time, or since in early history, were a multi-theistic society. So
That's one of the arguments for how, a lot of Christian theology, well, all religions really are kind of on the backs of whatever came before them. And there's a lot of sort of repurposed mythology and symbols. And one of the things that I think people, and especially the more devout you are, the more this may make you uncomfortable. But like the thing that is interesting is that this notion of monotheism is clearly kind of being sold through the the first commandments, where quite literally the first is put no God before me.
Right.
And I think that arguably gets spun as a like have no sort of false idols. But in reality, it's like you look at the Roman context in which this is emerging, and it's like, those gods are fine. Mine's better.
Right.
The Ten Commandments are from.
I'm sorry,
Jewish
not
tradition,
not.
right? So they would
You're right.
predate
It's not.
Romans by a
It's
long
not
way.
Rome. It's
Yeah.
pre.
Sorry,
Rome,
apologies. Like
No, you're right. You're right.
I
You're
see
be
comments.
more-
I close my eyes and I see comments. That's all.
It would be
That's all.
competing with more Babylonian.
Yeah, but the same argument
Mesopotamian.
applies. Like I'm not. Yeah.
The thing about it is, and before this, again, I'm looking at the comments too. It doesn't change
it.
anything. It doesn't change the poetry of it. It doesn't change.
Not at all.
Once you understand that Genesis was literally a poem, and it was this metaphor and this beautiful allegory to explain to people something to help assuage fear, it doesn't change anything. And that's the thing that I've never been able to understand of why people, whenever people get dogmatic and they stop seeking answers, or as my dear comrade Austin would say, stop seeking the question, then you're steeped in, you can only go so far. Dogma can only go so far. And what I believe far
And
more.
it's so easily undermined anyway.
Yeah, it's like
if you're
don't seek the answer, seek the question.
I mean, to your point about voting on what's considered canonical in the Bible or not, there were literally many centuries where whole books and gospels that are now considered forgeries or apocryphal, like they were considered part of the core text for century. There were whole many generations of Christians that had a very different Bible that we have little
Even
little
Catholics have a
awareness of
different
now.
Bible than like the Protestant or other fundamental faiths. But there weren't four dudes that wrote gospels. There were gospels from everybody was like, well, I'm going to tell you my story. And the funniest one is that John, the Apostle John, was the last one to write it. And the way he starts, he was like, I was the one he loved, because he knew that nobody else could argue with him. It was like, we're all disparate. I was his favorite because nobody else could be like, he hated you. What are you talking about? I love, from my perspective, there's Austin and I on the top, and then Mike and Alanah on the bottom, and Austin and I are just going nerd back and forth about history and philosophy, and Mike and Alanah are just rolling their eyes going,
I'm
can
just-
we please
Well, so
start
that-
the show?
Fine. It's
I
just
thought
interesting
the
regardless.
scope of this show had peaked. I thought we'd kind of found the outer limits of where we could go.
Nope.
And
Nope.
today we're
Pressing those
solving
boundaries.
religion. Today.
Well,
Now let's
Imagine
talk
what would happen
about
if we did a
Apple.
drunk episode, like
In conclusion, that's the story of my boat.
it's a sick
there you
boat.
go.
I'm a huge fan. And I was gonna ask you, but now I'm afraid because we're 20 minutes in and we've spoken about religion most of the time, and it's a video game podcast, quote unquote. I was gonna be like, well, I know that Mike, I think it was your dad, is a programmer. Austin, what does your dad do?
Oh my
He
God.
was an orthopedic surgeon, completely unrelated to.
Quite different to composing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
How about you,
His
Troy?
his
Well, he's
mother
still-
was a
he's-
musician, but
My
I think of it as
father,
definitely a skeleton piano joke that I couldn't get to in time.
Yeah.
Well, workshop
no.
it, get back to us.
ivory, bone.
Yeah, I'm gonna work
No,
it on-
That's not gonna. Yeah, keep workshopping that.
Tickling the ivories? No, it doesn't work.
My father has always had. An
these are made from
entrepreneurial
human
spirit.
remains.
Yeah. It feels like that thing is so much further from you, and when you reach it,
Yeah,
it makes it
does.
feel even more
It's
fake.
a little bit
It's the
precise.
fisheye lens. If I
It is.
tilt back, I look especially
Don't
flattering.
do that. Wow, that's really.
It's beautiful. It's a good look.
Never looked
My
hotter.
dad is a building manager right now. He's worked in like construction a lot, very like handyman stuff, but he also writes books all the time in his spare time.
Really?
Cool.
Yeah, and like one of the coolest things that he has ever done is he's been working on this like horror novel where just out of nowhere, being a 60-plus-year-old white man in Australia made his protagonist an Aboriginal girl. And I was like, fuck yeah, Dad. What the hell? Just like out of nowhere. It was like, yeah, so it's like this horror series about, people mistreating nature, and then the animals get reincarnated and come back to life and start killing people, basically.
That was our turn, bitch.
Yeah, and I was like, that's so cool.
Is Giovanni Ribisi the bad guy?
Yes,
Wow.
yes.
Has he ever been
It's
published?
Technically, the Spirit of the Wild. No, which is an interesting one because I've also written my whole life and never cared about being published, and I wonder if that's just like directly inherited from Dad. Because like he'll write it. He wrote a kid's book that like my sister and I got to enjoy when we were kids. It had like songs alongside it that he called Ruzzy Bee. It was about a bee and like how bees, pollinate and help the earth. So I had this experience of having this kid's book that like he even had an artist like draw all the pages, but he never published. So there's like this kid's book that is unique to my childhood.
Holy crap.
And my sister has it too, that I could still sing you the songs, but they don't exist to anyone else. It's just for my sister and I.
Is
which I
there
think
no
very cool.
ambition to
That's
get
great.
this out there? This seems like it needs to be.
He probably could publish that one. Like again, he had art made, but I feel the exact same way. I've written a bunch of stuff and have never cared about publishing any of it. I'll send
Why?
it to my friends. Why? Like I know that I should in theory, but in my
I don't know
head
if
I'm
you
like, I'll just
should.
have my friends read it. Like I don't care about it like everyone else reading it. Like I just have no.
I think it's cool. I think
It's a hobby, really.
think it's cool.
Look, my favorite book.
You don't have to monetize your hobby.
Yeah.
Like you don't have to work out a way to
Sure.
turn a hobby into a business.
I
Me, Austin, and Troy, and you do, but like it's nice to have little things that are
But
Certainly
it's
good
not,
for
even,
reading.
it's not even about the monetization of it. Look, my favorite book ever was never meant to be read by anybody else. It was the private journal of a man. But I guess for me, it's like, man, I'm really proud of this. I want people to hear it. It has nothing to do with like that song that we
The
did.
people
Breeze.
I'm close to.
Plus, it could be published for free. So
Yeah, so
it
what I'm
doesn't have to
thinking
be
about
monetized.
doing, there's one of them that I've been thinking about that I would maybe publish it and have all revenue go to charity or something. That would be
Sure.
the way to get me to publish something. But otherwise, I'm like, I just don't care about people I don't know reading it.
Do you want to be vocationally a writer?
Well, I am.
Okay.
Yeah, I have
So
been
I
for
guess my
years.
thing is like they're like I want to direct more, and nobody wants to be the one who goes, all right, we're going to give you your first movie, or you're going to first game or whatever. So I mean, I did a game, but then I'm immediately strapped to the success or the failure of that. So people were like, I even said I was going to do a short, and I had a dear friend of mine who's a director. He said, don't do a short. That doesn't prove anything. Just because you directed that, he's like, whatever you can shoot in 2 to 3 days doesn't demonstrate how you will deal with invariably the obstacles that happen over the course of.
Or whether you're worth a massive financial bet. I feel like
Sure.
the
You know what I mean?
directing
Like,
side of the industry.
I don't know that I don't know that I agree with that. I mean, a
can
director friend of
demonstrate
yours is
vision.
going to have. Yeah, well, that's pretty much what I was going to say. Is you in trade are showcasing your creative capability.
Yeah.
And if that's really heavily on display, like remember the Portal like fan film?
Yeah.
Do you remember who directed that? It was Dan Trachtenberg.
Yeah.
Cloverfield.
It was
Lane
the guy,
right?
yeah, the guy who I'm pretty certain off of the back of that
He
got
did.
to make 10 Cloverfield Lane. And that was a short film because it showed talent and vision. Similar cases, Wes Ball, he made this short film. He was a visual effects guy and was running a visual effects company and decided to kind of essentially make the equivalent of a demo reel, except it was his own creation. It wasn't a highlights reel of past gigs. And he made this short, and he got all these meetings to potentially option it as a feature. And then one of those conversations, the folks at Fox said, why don't you read this book, and instead of us make your short into a feature, why don't you pitch us how you would make this book into a feature? And he went and read it and then ended up directing the 3 Maze Runner movies instead. So like
I
to me,
think what I'm trying to
basically
articulate
you're wrong.
is there's directing, which is I have a vision for this and I can conceptualize this and show you that this is the approach that I would take to this thing. And then there is directing, because directing is the great quote from Tim Miller. He was like, 80% of directing is meetings.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I get to go to set. And he said, I have to have, I don't think this telling tales out of school, but Ryan Reynolds, they first get to the apartment in Deadpool. And Ryan Reynolds is just freaking out. He's like, look at this place. This is incredible. Tim, did you know this is going to look like this? He goes, I had 5 meetings about that bookshelf. About every, he goes, he's like a captain on a ship. He knew every screw that was on that. So that's not necessary. And not only that, the reason there were 5 meetings is because he had to capitulate and sacrifice and compromise on every little item that was going to be in the shelf. It's like, wouldn't it be cool if you had a little R2-D2? Well, that's Fox. That's not Disney, so we can't incorporate that. So I understand that Marvel had. So there's all these little things that has nothing to do with, I did a short that I wrote and directed and shot myself versus here's all of the team of people that I need to assimilate and accumulate in order to execute this vision. So that's why he was saying, don't waste money or even time doing a short, because that's not really going to demonstrate what it's like to do a feature, much less a game. Like 2.5 years of development or 18 months of development. Oh my gosh. How many meetings do you have to have and how many kids do you have to slay?
Sorry.
All right.
Apologies, I talked over you. Even in games though, like I definitely, someone asked me on Twitter the other day if I wanted to direct a AAA game. I'm like, doesn't matter if I want to direct a AAA game. I wouldn't give me that budget. That's it. The team wouldn't trust me, right? Because you're going in as someone who's got no experience of that scale of production. It's a very different thing. So I think I think it's even within games, even within film. I imagine it's hard if you're someone who's directed a bunch of, I don't know, romantic comedies to go and pitch an epic disaster movie, right? Just because they're completely different scales of production. So yeah, you're always going to pitch it. The best advice I ever had was just make the thing you want to make, and eventually people will show up who want to pay you to do the thing. And even if you're making it bad, and there's actually loads of examples in film of this, right? The what's the guy who directed Monsters called? Who went on? He directed Rogue One, I think, didn't he?
Gareth Edwards?
I think he did. Gareth Edwards, yeah. So Gareth Edwards, his breakout was Monsters, which I think itself was actually based on a short film. Which was, have you heard of Monsters? This is a great movie to go and see.
No.
Definitely worth like a rental, especially with the context I'm about to give you. So it's a movie. The premise of it is there's, kaiju, they're like big octopus monsters, but they're contained in a specific area, and they're contained and held down, but people are trying to get out. There's people trying to escape the area these monsters are in and get out of that space and into America and into Europe. So what they did was they shot this, and then the story follows a couple of tourists who get caught up in all of this. So they shot it on borders of countries where there were immigrants trying to get across, where there were all these deprived areas, and they just essentially, literally, Gareth Edwards did the visual effects on a laptop in After Effects. He just add like signage saying quarantine zone, monsters that way, and you completely buy it when you're watching the film. And if you go back and watch it, you're like. And it actually makes the film, in retrospect, kind of awful as well to an extent, because all the extras are actually people who are in a bad situation and trying to work their way through. But it's such a kind of good way of making essentially a massive budget movie. It looks like a big budget kind of disaster movie, but it's not. It's just
what would you guess the budget?
This interesting layer added on top.
I just looked it up because I haven't seen this. I never heard of Gareth Edwards before he made the 2014 Godzilla film.
Oh, that's right. He did that as well.
I really enjoyed that, actually.
That was what I think probably came out of this. You should go watch
this one. It's really interesting.
Guess
what
he
made
this
Neil
for?
Blomkamp too, though. Like Neil Blomkamp was like, watch what I can do.
He was short, so he did short movies, yeah.
But if someone said, "Man, you can make," he goes, "I did this for nothing. I did this a badass special effect for nothing." I think the same thing for Tim Miller too. Tim Miller's owned Blur for years, and they did all of the video game trailers. He's like, "I can make this look awesome." And I think that without the success of James Gunn, which is like, look what happens when we put something nerdy in the hands of a true fan with true skill and talent, as opposed to let's get the big director. Let's get someone who really, really cares about this. And Tim Miller just made Deadpool one of the greatest Marvel movies, in my opinion, period. Yeah. So good.
What would you guess the budget of Monsters?
I know the answer to this one because I use
$11 billion
all the time.
That's the thing that's astonishing, because there's low budget and then there's this. $500,000.
Is it Prima? Oh, well, so it's not Prima.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
Watch Monsters. It looks like it cost 50 million at least.
No shit.
It looks like an expensive movie. It's really interesting, and if you know the context of its production, and it was basically, as far as I know, it was the director, and basically you've got two leads who are going through the scene. They would literally walk up to people and ask them to play like supporting roles. It's basically a documentary, but with this layer of fictionalized kind of context around it. It's really
Dude,
worth
I'd give
watching.
that guy a movie if he could turn. I mean, what did it?
Well, they gave him Godzilla. That was his pitch for Godzilla. Essentially, was look what I did with $500,000. Now give me Godzilla and
I
give
really
me how
like
much
that
Godzilla.
movie. To your point, Troy, about like the don't make the short film, I would disagree with that. I also made a short film this month. I haven't edited it yet though. But I would say for anyone who like ever wants, thank you.
You're invested in your disagreement.
For anyone who ever wants to get into my field, where it comes to games media, I'm always going to say just start making stuff. Like, I don't care what it is, like how much you get published. Like, it doesn't matter to me if you're doing it for someone else or if it's a YouTube channel that nobody watches. I don't care. Just get the experience in any capacity that you can to just start making stuff. So whenever anyone's like, how do I get my start? I'm like, you just start. Doesn't matter if your start is bad. Don't worry about failing when you start. My early videos are still on the internet and they're terrible. And I do have all of my archives of the first stuff that I wrote and it's atrocious. But you just gotta do it.
Yeah,
Like,
the addendum to that, what I would from my comment would be this: I would not make a short film expecting that to be my calling card to direct.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think that Olin Rogers is a friend and a vicious creator because he's just whatever he has at his disposal, he's going to start creating stuff with it. And he's done everything from like a camcorder to an iPhone to whatever he has. He's just, I just got to create. And I believe if you want to create, then use the term. Everybody has an iPhone or an Android or something. That is a wicked, amazing resource for doing full production. So I think that there's no excuse. Technology can't be an excuse for you not to make something. So I believe in just like write every day, shoot every day, make music every day, do something every day to help sharpen your skills. But don't necessarily think that that is going to be the thing that's going to get you. That can't be the reason why you do it. You're doing it for self-education.
I mean, you could be making YouTube videos for 10 years and expect to get a job at IGN because you've made 10 years worth of YouTube videos. It's not going to happen that way. Like that isn't how it works. But it's still better for you to have the experience even on your own than to not have any experience at all. Just start making the thing.
The topic starts at...
I know. It was like, do we even get on the topic? Because I literally might even pinpoint it myself. Hi, everyone, because I haven't introed the show. We're 35 minutes in. Welcome to Play, Watch, Listen. I'm Alanah.
Oh.
Do you have your coffee today, buddy?
I do have my coffee. And we're like always at like the same amount, Troy. The thing that gets me is we drink them to the same extent. I actually have been speaking to an artist.
Weirdos.
I tell everyone at the same time. Wait, let me intro all of you first. I'm joined by Austin Wintry, video game composer, Troy Baker, video game actor, and Mike Bithell, video game director. I've been speaking to an artist about getting us a t-shirt, and I have specifically tried to get a hand holding a coffee cup. And then the coffee cup's going to say Play, Watch, Listen on it.
Dope.
I thought it
was cute.
Yeah, so I'm trying to slowly work on that I thought was very cute. But obviously I'll send you guys like images when I have
I just, after 28 episodes or whatever, I finally was like, oh, I have this coaster that I could set. Because before, this thing would like, by the end of it, it was just like, I would have this water pool of condensation on my desk that drove me crazy. And I was like, oh, I've got this really cool...
August
coaster.
2020, everybody. Troy Baker finally discovered coasters.
Have you guys seen this?
What I love,
Try coasters.
My favorite is related to that. One of the recurring Troy motifs is the lean off of camera, and then the like of stirring the setting. The what do you call that? I'm blanking. Like the layering of your coffee, how it all like settles.
Oh, yeah.
Never happened.
So we hear you swirling the ice cubes.
I like that noise though. It's better than whatever the fuck his microphone's doing right now. So
again,
no, you're actually. I mean, it is every the start of every time you talk, but it didn't actually happen.
It's the start of every time I talk.
Didn't happen that time, but generally, yes, it is. It's fine.
Generally, yes.
So today, wow,
Apple.
37 minutes. It's fine. I don't feel like we need that much to dig into. You know, we were going to talk about everything that's been going on with Apple and Epic. And I think xCloud is also tied into this entire situation where for
Wait, what is fCloud?
xCloud?
Oh, xCloud. I thought you said fCloud. I was like, wait a minute.
No, not F Cloud.
What is F
Sounds
Cloud?
great. Sounds great. I can't even think of a joke for what F Cloud would
No,
be.
it sounds like
I know,
somebody
I'm-
was like,
F Cloud's the
I had
technical
the idea
term for what's
first.
happened
Fox
to Troy's
Zero.
mic. That's all it is.
I don't.
No, I think it was the first version of it. It's like, I had the idea first, but I called it F Cloud. And they're like, no, that doesn't make sense.
Ridiculous.
You're the Winklevoss of xCloud, is what you're saying.
We got to appeal to those kids with their monster energy, and F Cloud will never
Yes,
pull that off.
Doritos, all that stuff.
Yep.
So
Motocross.
to give a nice synopsis, 40 minutes into the show, Apple has an app store war against developers, and its ongoing antitrust issues appear to be coming to a head, according to Vox. I would guess that most people have heard about this, but basically, Fortnite is suing Apple, claiming that its app store practices violate the Sherman Act. Epic says that Apple's requirement that all mobile apps come through its app store and the 30% commission Apple charges for app sales and in-app purchases is a monopoly, and that Epic, as well as its fellow developers and their customers, should have alternatives. I feel like I fundamentally disagree with their logic there. But
Whose
this
logic?
is
Apple or Epic's?
Epic's, because if you own a platform and people are buying into a platform, wouldn't it not be a monopoly? And they also
Yeah, I
don't
mean, that's
have
the
the majority
thing.
of the market share.
Yeah, Apple is only gatekeeping for Apple devices, right?
Right.
That was the part that for me, I'm no legal scholar certainly, but it seemed like a stretch because there are other ways to play the game that don't have this issue.
Plenty
So,
of
like,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the 30% commission thing is... Epic's been really interesting about this. Like, people have, and still are, very negative about the Epic Game Store. But I believe the Epic Game Store, the cut for developers is 14... Sorry, for Epic is 14%? 17%?
I thought it was less.
Let me just go and check a receipt. Hold on, let's have a look.
Whatever
Yeah, I thought
it
it
is,
was less. I thought it was
Oh,
closer
yeah,
to
somewhere.
10.
I think is it 14 or 15? It's somewhere around there, isn't it?
I feel like
I mean, it's
This is
definitely the
embarrassing.
most-
As someone who sells a game on the Epic Store, I should
But it's
probably
definitely the
know this
most.
off the top of my head.
It for sure is the most developer friendly.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
By
massively, yeah.
And it's an interesting one, seeing people be so negative about any game that's going to that platform. I feel like
Is
a
that
part
true?
of that. Oh yeah,
It's 12%, by the way.
12%.
12%.
it's
That's
so
crazy.
good for devs, and I think again, people are very negative, still very very negative about people going to the Epic Game Store. There's this whole thing with Ooblets that I only recently found out about. Is like this just massive negative backlash if you're going on the Epic Game Store because it's seen as exclusivity, even though there's this Steam loyalty, which is still just exclusivity in a lot of cases. But
But there's no buy-in. It's not like you have to buy a membership to the Epic Game Store or something. That's the part to me that is so bizarre. Like, which icon you click on to get
Comments
your
are going to
game.
be so great today. Like,
I don't
just
understand
across
it,
the
though.
board, just all terrible.
The Bible and
Look,
Epic.
it's inconvenient. The Epic Games launcher has its issues. Like, I'm not totally happy with that platform. But the thing that I keep thinking about is when it comes to the 12%, a part of this that I feel like a lot of people is missing is that if your developers are making games and they get the 18% more than they would for selling their game on Steam, that money can help them make more games. So it's not just like, oh, they get more money. It's no, we all benefit from this because if you're buying the
Keep your
games there,
costs down.
yeah, they have, and I think they're also pretty heavily investing into a lot of people. It's certainly helpful for Control because they launched on Epic, and I'm pretty sure got a bunch of money for that.
Well, they also just have
I mean, I can't speak to
multiple.
specifics, but we were also an Epic Store exclusive on John Wick, which was very nice.
Same
It's a bit
with
about there you go.
same with Supergiant. Their first year of early access on Hades was
You're right.
Epic exclusive, and only last December became available on both. For what it's worth.
Yeah, it just,
Yeah, I agree with you. To me, the store is not as elegantly designed as Steam, although Steam has many. To me, Steam is like a software engineer's store page, and there's so much about it that is bizarrely technical and not user friendly.
Yeah.
But it's still very clear, and it's got a lot going for it. Never mind just the sheer volume of content and stuff. But to me, it's like at the end of the day, when I'm playing the game, the instant I click launch, the store that it's launching from means nothing. And so I've never understood the
Right.
weird tribal. It's very different than I don't even really understand the whole Xbox versus PlayStation sort of console wars thing. But at least that you understand that you're making a multi-$100 investment and it's going to come with different exclusives. And like, I can empathize with the people that get all wrapped up into that.
that
but
one's
the whole
also a
Steam
literal
versus-
marketing thing. Like,
Well,
they've
that
been
and
marketed to have console loyalty, for it to be a part of their identity, to like stick to it. Like, that's like years and years of marketing has made the console wars like a passionate thing. Look, I don't know entirely why people hate the Epic Game Store, so I don't want to say that I like it's ridiculous or I don't understand it, because I've actually not looked into it. So like, even points I disagree with, I generally want to be like, what is their perspective? But I unfortunately just don't know this perspective. But I'm not going to
also want to
discredit
make
it.
sure that when you say people hate it, it's like it is a widely accepted across the board. Everybody hates it, or it's like, no, I've just seen some bad comments about it.
It's pretty like death threaty aggressive when people announce Epic Game Store exclusivity.
Okay,
Like,
but the same thing about The Last of Us Part 2, but it's still the third highest selling PlayStation exclusive game ever.
yeah,
So you know
you're
what I mean?
right.
It's
Like, yes.
Did Last of Us 2 do well?
Yeah,
Right?
a bit.
Wait, are you Joel?
Wait, who's bruh?
Are you what is Last of Us?
Bruh.
I'm certainly generalizing, but I
Reset
feel
the
like
chart.
this is a.
But it's okay if it's generally true. I just didn't know if it
I don't
was
know about
like
generally true. It's like impossible to quantify on the internet, but I would say it is
There's a large backlash.
it's
That's
a
fair enough to
community
say.
accepted viewpoint, is what I would say. Is that, like, for me to say everyone hates the Epic Game Store, I feel like people would be like, sure. Like, I
Mike, you
understand
must
what you're
have. Yeah, I mean, to that, Mike, you must have when Hex was announced as an Epic exclusive, you must have gotten tweets and stuff from people that are like, "Oh, I would have bought it, but blah 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 blah."
or did you?
I mean, you do anything, you're going to get. you do anything involving video games, you're going to get someone tell you on the internet they don't like what you did. But no, we were actually genuinely like, and this is not discounting. I know that this, as Alanah said, there's been lots of very horrible reactions. We didn't get much, I think, because we were very straightforward with it. We're very specific. I think the other thing that helped us was we hadn't already announced. We announced as an exclusive. So there was no one who had gotten excited about it being
Surprise.
a Steam game and then being annoyed that we changed
Yeah,
it.
where the
I think that
Uber
was the biggest
situation
thing
was
that
more
kind of had an
complicated because
influence.
they had backers, and
Of course.
they were criticized for being pretty sassy in the way they announced it. Like, that's complicated, but they still were getting, death threats for it.
Yeah, which is absolutely unacceptable. But
Regardless.
yeah, we were lucky in
it has
that we
to be
didn't
the
get that.
extremity of it. You know what I mean? Like there's just the militant. Not 90% of people gave death threats. It's like if a few
No, it wouldn't
bit
be.
of
I mean, I just published a video about Ooblets. I did a sponsored video on Ooblets this week, and that was the thing that, like, anytime that anyone approaches me with a sponsored video, when it's a game that I've already played and like, I'm like, great. Like, of course I would do that, and I really like Ooblets. I had no idea any of that had happened until reading the comments on my video where people were like, did you not know about this? And I was like, I had no fucking idea. But it was, I don't know, it's a lot of comments. Like, a lot of people talking about hating Ooblets for the way that it responded to the Epic
Okay,
Game Store
so it's a
situation.
safe thing to say that this one game received a lot of backlash for being exclusive, but you can't say that everybody
did.
hates the
A lot
Epic
did.
Store.
I still think I can. I
can tell you
that's
the
not,
Pathless-
again, of course that is a generalization, but I would say among the games community at large, people hate the Epic Game Store. Like, I feel like I can say that. And
It's a.
You
We'll
can
say it's
say
a.
whatever you want. I want to make sure that we're not, perpetuating an unfounded statement.
No,
that
I think your point is a good one, Troy. But I think Alana's right in terms of, like, thumb on the pulse of the kind of general feeling of people. I would say it's a small but vocal minority, which is often the case, right?
probably.
But they are. It's non-trivial. When Pathless was first announced at the Game Awards a couple of years ago, it was also announced as an Epic Store exclusive. And if you go and look at the comments, there's always, you don't have to scroll every few comments. There's another one that's like, oh man, I would have loved to have played this, but fuck Epic. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's
there's
like-
a lot of negativity.
Yeah, it's a
surrounding it, but I don't know the stats. I haven't done a survey. But the reason that I wanted to bring that up in general is, at the very least, where Epic is coming from and, like, criticizing the 30% commission that Apple charges, they are at least a company who is coming from a perspective of doing 12% and not 30% like everyone else. Like, they at least have that leg to stand on. And for them to drive it makes sense. It's also part of the wording. If this works, which it won't, I feel like they've specifically phrased it with the intention of protecting a lot of developers. It would set a precedent for these practices are predatory against the development community in some of that legal phrasing. So that would, in theory, start to protect devs. However, if you look at it's so fascinating. Like, the companies who the ranking of global market share for video games is number 1, Tencent, which is Epic.
by far.
Number 2 is Apple. And then number 3 is Sony, unless I'm swapping 2 and 3. I might be. But they are all top 3, and it's like these are just like mega corporations fighting over a market.
Also, it's worth clarifying, I don't think Tencent are majority shareholders of Epic, right? Like, it's not fair to say that Epic is a Tencent company.
I think you're right.
I think the majority is elsewhere.
It's a lot of conjecture
But I mean,
floating
Tencent
around
has
right
lots
now,
of
guys.
investment.
Let me look it up.
No, I think you're right.
Tencent have a lot. They have a lot of investments across the. I mean, there's very few
It's
games companies that
40%.
you've heard of that don't have some level of Tencent.
So that's not majority.
substantial. It's not
Yeah, so
majority.
it actually
Substantial,
says Tencent acquired approximately 48.8% of Epic, then issued share capital equating to 40% total of Epic. So I think that that's pretty fucking significant.
That is significant, but it's not
Very
majority.
significant. Yeah.
But it also
They're not controlling.
as a tangent off of that, when the whole Trump banning TikTok and banning Tencent related commerce in the U.S. that immediately
Theory.
also opened up this question of like, because I have a friend who works for Tencent who was like, he wrote on Facebook, I love days when the president is trying to make my job disappear
Yeah.
or something like that, because he's literally like one of the American kind of liaisons to Tencent's work here, and it's like
The fact that this happened in the same period of time is
It's
suspicious
bizarre.
to me.
Well, is that coincidental? Not to get too speculative, but I mean,
Mr. Conjecture over here.
I'm not. Even
Yeah, I was gonna say,
I'm
like, we-
offering speculation though. I'm not passing it off as fact. That's the difference. I'm wondering if that happens to be, because that does seem kind of like a shots fired across each other's bows. You know what I mean?
I think if you've been paying attention to and this now it sounds like I'm insulting you for not paying attention. If we've been paying attention to Epic all this time, I mean, Mr. Sweeney has not been private in his view that these stores should be more open, the percentages should be different. I think I saw a keynote at DICE like a couple of years ago where he was talking about it's definitely been a thing he's cared about for a very long time.
Yeah, he's been
it
tweeting
might
about
be
it.
that they've crossed a threshold where he feels empowered enough to do it, because obviously Fortnite has done so phenomenally well. But
Yeah, so what
I
actually
don't
happened...
think this is not a new position.
Right. They announced a discount for V-Bucks, but the discount was basically exploiting it's all like so cyberpunky to me. The discount was exploiting like getting around Apple's 30% cut. So they were for that exploitation. However they did it, Apple immediately took them off the store. Which is, I mean, it's the same reason that xCloud isn't technically allowed, is that you would be able to purchase things for xCloud that wouldn't necessarily give Apple a 30% cut, which isn't allowed. The whole thing.
It also forces their hand by doing that as an update. They would have been in breach of the license of the whatever, I can't remember the exact wording. They would be, so it kind of forces Apple to either enforce their own rule or the rule becomes irrelevant. So it was, Epic definitely forced Apple into a position where they had to ban them. No judgment morally either way, but like that was definitely the play, was to
Correct.
to trigger this event to occur.
Which
the
was
question
done
is-
again with the phrasing of, this is cheaper because we don't have to deal with this big bad company taking the revenue. We're literally announcing a sale, and that's what sparked this whole thing happening. Was, well, it'll be cheaper for you because they're not stealing our money. That's how they kick off this whole thing. It's fucking nuts. So I'll get back to what you were just about to say, Austin, but I did want to get to like the big part of this for me is Apple is now threatening to cut off Epic's access to its developer tools program.
That's
which would
basically what I was
affect-
going to bring up.
Okay,
Yeah.
which would affect any app that uses Unreal, and thus any consumers who use those apps.
Yeah,
I
that was
didn't
the
realize
part
it would be
that's-
that far-reaching. What?
That was the part. That was
So
the part
the
where it seemed like there's a lot of potential collateral damage to people that have nothing to do with Fortnite.
Especially for the partnership that they've had from the very beginning. Remember when they launched the iPad? They were like, Unreal will run on the iPad, and they did that with Infinity Blade. I didn't realize it would go that far-reaching. What?
Well,
Well, it
doesn't
has
have
to, is the issue, is
oh,
if-
we just said the opposite. I was like, I thought that they were just doing
Oh.
it because Apple's like, fuck you. Why would it have to cut everyone off?
So again, like, this is all speculation, but the issue here is, because I'm worried about Troy. It scared me.
Go on, Mike.
No,
We'll talk about the Bible
issue
again.
here is obviously if you're making a game in an engine, you have the version of the engine that exists. You install it, you build the game, you're using those tools, and your game basically holds that code and uses that code and interacts with the platform via that code. So whenever I make a game, I'm basically building a game layer on top of a big engine, right? I use Unity, but Unreal is the same thing in that sense. The issue here is no one's taking away the version of Unreal that a developer making an iOS game right now still has their version of Unreal, and their version of Unreal will work and they can make stuff. But the second Apple change something in their software, in the stuff we have to interface with as game developers, so interfaces, screens, features, any of that requires an update to the engine.
Wow.
And if the engine can't be updated because the company who makes the engine is blocked out, everyone's stuck in the old version of the engine. So it's not that they're blocking developers necessarily from making games, but if you can't make if the platform has moved on and evolved, a good example of this, like with any game we make for console, you generally it's not best practice to keep upgrading your engine while you're making a game because it introduces a bunch of bugs and issues. But generally, the moments we really usually have to upgrade our engine is when we're doing, say, a port of a game, and we're like, oh god, Xbox have added this awesome new feature, and we have to support it. So that means we have to go. Our version of Unity that was released a year ago doesn't have this, doesn't plug into this feature properly. So we have to go and get the new version of Unity to plug it in. It takes a little while, but we get it done. It's fine. The issue here is, there's no more updates. In theory, this is all theory, but like if this drags on and Unreal can't support iOS because they can't, run builds and
which again
interact with the platform.
They don't have to do. This is a retaliation.
I would think that right now Unity is just kind of going, what's going to happen next?
Who doesn't have to do it? Who doesn't have Epic don't have to do it?
No, I'm saying
you're saying Apple doesn't.
Apple doesn't have to do this. I see this as Apple doing this as a retaliation. They're just like play nice.
They do have to. Well, they have to because when you're a developer on a platform, you sign an agreement. And again, this is all legalese, so like I'm sure lawyers who are expensive enough could plow through this. But like when I release a game on Let's Carry On with Xbox, I sign a contract with Xbox that says, okay, Mike, you can be on our platform, but you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. And in exchange, we guarantee that if we sell a copy of your game on Xbox, we're going to send you your cut.
So what you're saying is
you have an agreement.
Epic would have signed a deal that would cover everything to do with Unreal.
Epic will have signed a deal. No, Epic will have signed a deal saying we won't push an update to our game that monetizes outside of your store.
So why is that not just specific to Fortnite, though?
Yeah, I was going to say, to me, it seems
because they're the public. So I think the ban would be on because the contract is not between Fortnite and Apple. The contract would be between Epic and Apple. So therefore, they're now a developer who's broken the rules, which means that I guess the relationship wouldn't continue at that.
It just seems like I think
breached the contract.
I think the point that Alanah is making, which is a similar confusion.
Fortnite's not a separate company. It's a thing made in the same
office.
But it still seems like two different prongs of thought. Like right,
it have to be right
because Epic's store term violations seem different from Unreal Engine's usability on iOS devices. Like that seems like those would be separate contracts.
No, because the engine. It's not the operability. My understanding is it's not about the engine and banning the engine's use. It's that the company that makes the engine can't upload to iOS anymore, so therefore can't build an engine that works with that platform.
Wow,
that would be the difference. And again, that's my speculation.
Okay, so it does say Apple will terminate Epic's inclusion in the Apple Developer Program, a membership that's necessary to distribute apps on the iOS, if the company does not cure their breaches to the agreement within 2 weeks. So you would be right in that.
Right.
It's just that
they're in breach of contract and they would have to correct that.
Yes, Epic is being... But this is still a retaliation. It's not fix the thing in Fortnite where you snuck in a new payment option that went around. Like, it's not fix Fortnite.
I wonder if a
solution...
No, that's what that would be is no, the what you just read is fix Fortnite and then it's all fine.
Dang,
I have
dude,
two.
By the way, I'm not being an Apple apologist here.
It's
I have a good relationship with Epic, but it's definitely Epic poked the bear on purpose. You don't
for sure they
have
did. I don't think that's
an animated video ready to go. Yeah.
No.
But I also don't know who's wrong in this. You know what I mean? Like, it clearly.
Neither do I. Is the weird part.
And I
I'm
also
not
don't
sure
know what's
either.
going to happen. Like, this is fascinating to me.
Wait, I have two questions for you, Mike, related to
This is better than
things
Game of
that you
Thrones.
just said.
It is. But it's
Epics
like
are now
that,
at
but
war
if-
with the apples.
It's fucking
House
crazy.
Apple has waged war against
To me,
House
it's like
Epic.
kaiju fighting. You know, it's just two
Oh, yeah.
giant.
Two
And I
guys
loved
got
Mike.
into a
It's
It's
mech,
like
and
that,
now
but
it's
imagine
swords
imagine if in Game of Thrones, if the Targaryens win, your next project makes X amount more money, and if the other side wins, then your game doesn't release. It's like Game of Thrones, but with much higher stakes to the game development community.
Which
Yeah.
by that
And who's the
logic,
Thing to be watching.
Targaryens?
That
Apple's
would-
Targaryens, right? In that,
it would make Apple
equation.
the bad guy.
I don't know because
I don't
honestly,
either.
from what you just read, Epic did. It's like, hey, if you didn't agree with it, that's fine, but it still lays out here. These are the terms, and you guys went around the terms.
Epic did
I
it on
think it's-
purpose, 100%. They were cheeky about
Sure.
it.
It's a
They knew
punk
what they were
move.
doing.
It's a punk
but,
move.
like,
The
but it's
timing being also
But-
around everyone being upset about xCloud not being able to be on iOS devices is very convenient. This is like finally a fuck you, Apple. You take
Yeah,
that.
So
I have to do it on Audible. If I want to buy an audio book, I have to leave the app on the Audible app and go to the web browser on my phone and buy it through the web browser
Yes.
because
Yes.
they can't do in-app purchases. It's exactly the same thing.
Correct.
It sucks. It's annoying. But the crucial thing is that percentage split as well is an aspect of this. Is Apple? Do you know where 30% comes from? There was
No,
it was a
arbitrary.
negotiation with the music industry. It was a negotiation with the music industry back in the day.
Oh yeah,
Listen,
like
I don't know if you've
99,
got
2000 when
more
they lost
experience with this than me.
iTunes.
It was how they sold iTunes basically to the thing and that was the percentages established. But it's not like in any way a number that makes sense, arguably in the modern context.
But it's safe to say that iTunes established the market value, and everyone else in some way or another.
Yeah, all the other platforms have kind of followed suit, and 30% is kind of an industry
They
standard.
fell in step.
If that 30%
Nice.
changed, that would be massive.
Austin, you said you had 2 questions for Mike.
Yeah. So.
What is your birthday?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you single?
Why is the sky blue?
What is your zodiac sign?
Orange. Orange is my favorite color. I'm a Scorpio.
So it's so 2 things. When you talk about the lack of updates for Apple support, like the kind of communicability between the platform and the engine, right? Whether because it seems like that could go both ways. If Unreal doesn't update and they are not able to connect with Apple, there's a question of if the Unreal update will play nicely with the platform, and then also if the platform does some kind of update on the iOS side, that also. So it seems like there's a 2-way traffic problem there.
Yeah.
To my layman's.
And there's always a relationship. So this is always my stock answer to when someone says are you going to make games for PlayStation 5? It's like, I assume Sony and Unity have been having meetings for a couple of years, and I presume the engine will work. Like every platform holder and every major engine has a relationship. Clearly, this one is not in a good place.
So all right, so then so
Unity
the
and
question
Apple
then,
will talk, Unreal and Apple will talk. Yeah.
So then the question that's essentially a preface to is does it actually prevent launch of the game, or does it just increase the odds of bugs because you are operating on out of date software basically? Like, could I still, if I want to make a game today that is in Unreal Engine and launches and all this follows through,
And just never update?
is it just like I'm potentially releasing something broken, or I just can't?
So most platforms are backwards compatible intentionally up to a point. So if I release an Xbox game I did. So I know an Xbox game released in 2013. Probably we released one in 2013. You can still download and play that game, and it will work. And I don't have to do an update to it. I don't have to go back to Unity and get the engine. That's fine. On consoles, that's true. On PC, of course, it's not true because Windows changes and then an old game doesn't work anymore. Obviously, everyone's aware of that. Same's true on Android and iPhone as old games become unusable.
All right.
So no, in the short term, this would mean your Unreal game is not going to support the new awesome screen on the iPhone, or it's not going to integrate with this feature. In the long term, it means your game's going to die.
Well, that's a little silver lining though.
Yeah, there's definitely games that I have that I will not I have an iPad that's like an old iPad Air or whatever that I will not update because there's games that I know that it will no longer support because it forces them to go.
Like
you have
Alanah with the PT.
Yeah, you'll know that you got a PS4 that goes boop, just sits over there, And it's the same way. And I can't get that game ever again. And I would lose everything. So, I mean, it's 100% within Apple's like, no, you can make whatever you want if you want to keep it on our store.
So question 2 then, which is way more just kind of, well, I guess our word of the day, speculative, is because this appears to be an Epic as a company term violation in their deal with Apple as concerns Fortnite, but which drags Unreal into the mess as a result. I'm wondering if the solution is a kind of like sort of in the spirit of like Cayman Island tax shelters. If Unreal as an engine, if they were to divest that,
if they should split up.
Yeah, like could Unreal and the support of that be its own company that is, at least on paper, not actually part of Epic anymore, even though presumably all the beneficiaries would remain beneficiaries and that kind of thing? Because they are. It's basically it's a company that makes two very different well, more than two, but like they have one massively successful game and then this other business that's freaking half the industry or more.
I have an important note
that is doable
that I need to bring up. Yeah. What does notarize mean?
Notarized?
Notarize.
Like when you sign something?
Notarize.
I mean,
I'm a notary, so
it's like
therefore
a confirmation of the validity of a document, right? Is that
yeah,
right?
well, there are people that are
but
there are. I mean, I can answer that there are licensed notaries whose job are to be the official witness to you signing a document and enter into
it's a witness signature, essentially. It's a witness agreement.
Okay, so The Verge wrote, Epic won't be able to notarize Mac apps either, a process that could make installing Epic software more difficult or block it altogether.
Oh, that's a different use.
So notarizing, so on the Mac in particular, I can tell you that is you can get a certificate. You know when I don't know if any of you have ever encountered this, when you download a piece of software and it comes and it says, when you try and open it, it says, this has been downloaded from the internet, we can't vouch for if it's secure, you probably shouldn't. That you can get certified.
That's that thing you always haphazardly click. Yeah, I'm sure it's fine.
Well, I'm sure it's fine.
So
yeah, exactly.
But
it's a thing. And
Apple
what's
requires
interesting is
that all apps are notarized before they can be run on newer versions of Mac OS, even if they're distributed outside the App Store. So this would basically say the same. It just means that at a certain point, you would not be able to install any more Epic games, Unreal games, even if they were running on old Unreal, because they aren't notarized.
Doesn't that kind of chip away the credibility of that,
I don't. This is where we're at the edge of my knowledge because I'm not an Unreal developer. My understanding would be that those games would not be notarized by default, and the developer of that game could then notarize. But I might be wrong. Actually, that one I'm not sure on.
This is a very speculative episode, but to be fair, basically everyone is being speculative on this right now because we don't know what's going on.
We started talking about
We are not in the room right now.
We're all very aware of lawyers
I was
as
setting
well,
the tone, guys. I knew what
you
I was doing.
You were foreshadowing.
Let's talk about the Bible now. Let's speculate about business deals and affairs between
two
Apple
gods
and Epic.
in our industry. No, this is.
I was going to say. I mean, I think they affect
not
about
a
the same
tangent.
number of people. So
It's a setup. It's what Family Guy said. I was like,
same
how is
number
this
of
going to
people.
pertain to any rest of the episodes? It's not a non sequitur. It's a setup.
I mean, it's just purely selfishly. This is one of those where the first thing that I read is, I wonder if this is going to impact me in terms of the pathless, because the pathless
How does it
is
impact me?
yeah,
fair.
pretty much
2020.
as we established, all future episodes are going to be about me. Yeah. So to that
fair,
end,
it's
time to
reasonable.
talk
It's
about
balanced.
Sane, Garrus. I'm
Love
just taking
Rex.
us there.
This is a Twitter reference for everyone who doesn't follow us on Twitter. We had a conversation on Twitter about Rex. But back to the pathless. What is your question?
Well,
there?
because Pathless is developed in Unreal.
Yeah.
And it was the Apple Arcade has leaned heavily on it, as this is an Apple Arcade title. It will be available on iOS devices, but it will also be shipping on PS4, PS5 day one, and it's an Epic Store exclusive.
That's
so it's like
fascinating.
Come on, man.
it's basically that scene in Full Throttle where the motorcycles
You're
are
absolutely
going
right.
to quarter in different directions. Like, so I
mean,
you know,
this is
and I'm
where-
not.
this
This
is
is
where
making
it-
games
to
wasn't
be-
hard enough. You know,
be
it's
clear-
like, God damn it.
This is me being
It's
very.
always fun when a story like this comes out in public so that everyone sees how ridiculous all of this side of the
Yeah.
industry actually is.
I have
the
to,
one thing that's worth saying.
Wait. I just have to be very Mike
Go on.
in for a moment and just full disclosure,
Mark
I
Spiffle.
am not speaking on behalf of
Mark
Giant Squid or Annapurna here.
course.
I don't know the ramifications. I didn't have a chance to ask them. I just know that on the face of it, that game is basically standing on either side of a split down an iceberg.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it made me feel anxious.
It's worth saying, just to add to that, this is where the fact that the games industry is people rather than just a bunch of contracts is important. Is I'm sure a lot of people involved in a situation like that are talking to each other and figuring it out. And the contractual side of this is messy, obviously, for lots of reasons. But there's also, people who will be having calls and having conversations and figuring out path through that.
Man,
it's
how
often
scary.
It's messy, and I
And then
wouldn't
also
want to
that
be in that situation.
Fortnite
That
tried
sucks.
to activate their fans by like promoting a hashtag in game saying free Fortnite. Like the whole thing is just so cyberpunky to me. Like this is two mega corporations trying to fight, like including on social media, and get engagement, and it's just so wild to watch.
So wait, I have another question.
Okay.
I'm just gonna go play
Troy,
Angry Birds. What?
Does that mean that you never played strategy games?
Not in Unreal, you won't be. Say again, Austin. What'd you say?
I said, Troy, does that mean that you never really got into RTSs? Because that's such a PC genre. I'm just taking us back 45 minutes.
About PC.
Yo, I could
I
go
was gonna
back.
say,
I
yeah.
remember the first time that my dad ever pulled out a box with 4 letters on it in small little pieces called Risk. And I was like, okay. And so teaching me the tenements of what, all Command and Conquer and all that
To
stuff.
be
is
clear,
all-
I was just being snarky, but I'm loving this answer.
Oh, that'll teach you.
No, well, because I
was a
got a
cold
lot of
night in
childhood
December.
father-son risk also, so you jumped into a warm
There's
pool.
fathers and sons parents and children has been a theme of this.
Dude, this is
episode, the way that I enjoy
stupid.
it.
There's so guys, you don't understand. My parents played. I come from in the same way that Alanah, like you come from. You're a generational writer. I'm a generational gamer because my parents, instead of watching TV or whatever, they would go into the computer room and they would put in a disk drive that had multiple, like 5.
But they wouldn't let little Troy play a game on the computer. You
What
said
are
you never
doing,
played
Dad?
games on computers.
Are you playing on the computer?
What are you doing,
Go
Dad?
to
Can I
bed now,
come in?
son.
Man, remember
What is
computer
leisure?
rooms?
What's a
Remember the
leisure
fucking-
suit, Larry? Dad, can
Yeah.
I see? Go to bed, son.
Oh, nice.
Go to bed, mate. This
The,
one's not for you. Nice, Austin.
There it is. Oh, Austin was about to play it.
Al
No,
Low tune.
they were
Love
playing a game called Zork, and they were into it, and they had this notepad, and they were. This is what they did. They were like cracking. It was, Geraldo Rivera unlocking.
It's
Capone's
Troy. I can
vault
just
had
picture
less.
the scene as Troy eating cereal at 11 o'clock at night in a dimly lit
I guess
room,
I'll
and
make
then
my own dinner. I
you
guess
can
we're
see
doing-
the glow down the
open up
hall
a
from the
cold can
computer
of
room.
soup.
Cheese
Like
sticks.
fucking Oliver Twist.
Yeah.
There, please, sir. So anyway, they get to a point in the game where they realize, oh no, they're in hell, and it's like they had like this crisis of conscience, like I guess we can't play this. And so there's a whole like generation of games that if it skewed at all, metaphysical, spiritual, demonic, quote unquote, anything like that, I couldn't participate in it. I couldn't listen to it. And there was this constant juxtaposition. So what I was able to parse out from this culture was very, very narrow. So there's a lot of stuff that I missed out on and had to come back much later. That's why there's a lot of people of my generation or even younger that are they're console gamers. I was an arcade gamer. So my respite was my parents wouldn't buy me a Nintendo or buy me a Sega. I had to go to all my friends' houses and play on theirs.
I was the same. I didn't have
Were
a
you the
console as a
same?
kid for the exact same reason.
But my
Just
parents-
video games are time wasting, so I wasn't allowed one.
Well, it wasn't even for that.
This is
It was-
all
it
just
was-
one. Your whole career is just one giant. I'll
therapy.
show you.
It was the financial investment. my parents
Very much the
never
epic
had,
to my parents' Apple, yes.
Nice.
Yeah, my parents didn't have the
you.
100 quid, 200 quid, or whatever to
Why are your parents using quid, Troy?
Because I'm looking at Mike.
Because they're
Biffle.
British. He established that
man.
earlier.
Did you
He's
hear the
being
accent
consistent.
before, mate?
We're playing
They're
Zork.
British, isn't it? So, but what they did have was a need to go out on a Saturday without their 10-year-old son, and they could pay $5 for a babysitter in the shape of arcade tokens, which is just bananas to me to think. It's like, here you go to the arcade. We'll be back in several hours.
Oh,
Hope
yeah.
you don't get kidnapped.
That happened to me too.
One of the as a apropos barely of that, when I worked a few years ago with the Tripod Boys down in Melbourne on this comedy show called This Gaming Life, there's a whole song in there where he talks about growing up and dealing with childhood bullies where his parents are like, you need a hobby. We're going to enroll you in sports. And he says the kids weren't playing sports. All they ever did was pull down each other's pants and just screw with each other, basically, like childhood bullies, you know? And yeah. So the whole song is like, that's the chorus, pulling down each other's pants. And it's like this whole recurring thing. And then he goes, one day I rebelled. I took money out of my mom's purse when she wasn't looking, and I went down to the arcade because at the arcade everyone wears belts, and it's like that was the origin point of me as a gamer. Yeah, it's so freaking hilarious.
Yeah, they are fantastic. I should leave a link to where you can find Tripod. They're so good. All right, we gotta wrap this up, but I did want to say, like, this topic is just like so monolithic and it's gonna keep developing.
Monolith is actually a different developer.
For fuck's sake.
Ping in the upper quadrant on my screen there, just real quick.
The last thing that I wanted to note was that
Jesus Christ.
Basically,
Jesus
Epic
Lord and
filed
Savior.
for a preliminary injunction against Apple, asking the court to stop the company from cutting it off. Epic says it will be irreparably harmed long before final judgment comes if it does not obtain the injunction. And then Apple basically responded by saying that Epic took the unfortunate step of violating the App Store guidelines, and that it would make every effort to work with Epic to resolve these violations. So it seems like
that's
Apple's
what dicks always say.
We'll try to resolve it, but they said resolve, not change. They are trying to make Epic resolve their violation. So I don't know, man.
And that's the crucial thing here is Epic's entire point is that the rules they're being held to
aren't fair,
awful, and illegal.
Yes,
which is illegal, I presume. Like I think that's their case, whether or not it's true, whatever. But like that's their case, and that's what they're going to have to spend years proving.
Isn't it interesting to think that this I picture like two people, one on behalf of Apple, one on behalf of Epic, sitting at a conference table.
And like the old Apple PC commercial.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Justin Long and
Justin Long.
What are we going to do here, guys?
Who was the other guy? The one from
John
the Daily
Hodgman.
Show.
That's the
John
other
Hodgman.
John Hodgman. John Hodgman. Yeah.
I think those were great ads.
They really were. They worked.
They were hilarious. They really spoke to the. Anyway, so to me the thing that's fascinating is picturing that these two could be sitting across from the table, and it's like whoever signs whatever piece of document, it's like a multi-billion-dollar signature.
Yeah.
And just the notion of so much funneling down to such a
and will impact people for years too. Like this
like
huge.
Mike said, this 30% would seemingly, I mean, I don't think it was that figure came to haphazardly, but it's kind of an arbitrary number, was decided 20 years ago in a separate industry.
It's a seriously important number.
It's a very important number.
Every games company gives 30% of the money their games make to the platform those games are sold on, at least.
It's protection money. You understand? You pay me my card.
That's a massive, like, that goes down by 18%. That's a big.
Oh yeah.
That's a big change to every games company, and that's massive.
I feel like I want that to happen.
Totally get that.
We'll see.
Yeah.
That's why it's such a shame that there's such a pervasive gamer, we'll say, skepticism, charitably, about the Epic Store. Because if half
again, I feel like I want to look into it. I don't know entirely where that comes from.
Yeah, there's a lot of
it could
nuance
be valid,
to those conversations, I think.
Well, either way, we know
that
that Steam's numbers still dramatically outpace Epic Store's numbers. So even if it's not about hating the Epic Store, it still hasn't been bought onto. But just think about the seismic financial shift if even a quarter or half of Steam's user base shifted to the Epic Store, and that percentage different was suddenly now going to developers. Like, think of the huge financial change that would mean for thousands
I think
and
we'd get
thousands
more
of
games.
studios.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine that it not
I get a
benefiting
new camera,
gamers.
new webcam for me, just to
Yeah.
say that one.
A new webcam.
Better microphone,
Maybe a
new
new
mic for
shirt.
Troy.
Troy's tech issues.
Yeah, better microphone.
I
the
would.
whole
I
thing.
wouldn't mind a new camera.
Real
also.
lights. You know. Yeah.
All right.
right.
I have no fucking idea how I'm going to title this disaster of an episode. Austin, can you play us out?
Yeah,
Should
buddy.
I do a
Play it.
little
Yeah.
homage to Troy's little?
Yeah. Play, Watch, Listen is brought to you by Alanah, Pearce and Twizzlers. That's right, Twizzlers, the candy that sticks in your teeth as much as your gut. Tune in next week for another exciting episode of Play, Watch, Listen.
You went longer than I was expecting.